Hey guys, welcome back to another Interior Analysis podcast episode. I'm your host for this episode, Jelani T. Kelly,
I'm Evan Westman.
And I'm Angel Michele.
and today we are discussing the 1998 movie, The Prince of Egypt, animated by DreamWorks, directed by Brenda Chapman, Steve Hickner, and Simon Wells, written by Philip Lazebnik and Nicholas Meyer, and depending on who you ask, God. It's a stacked cast, so I won't list everyone, but it stars Val Kilmer, rest in peace, Ray Fiennes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Steve Martin, and Martin Short.
I forgot how stacked it was. I knew a few of those, but then I was like, wait, all of them?
Yeah.
All of them.
I was legit looking up names when I was watching with my sister, and I kept naming shit. She's like,
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I don't think I knew most of these people when I saw this when I was a kid. Yeah, knowing these people as actors now, it's a pretty stacked cast. Even for 98, right?
Yeah.
yeah, probably.
I mean, Ray Fiennes and Sandra Bullock, I think, were not quite as big. They were, like, rising at the time, whereas everyone else was probably pretty established, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Val Kilmer had done Batman by this point.
Yeah,
And
like
a couple
Val
other
Kilmer,
things.
Michelle Pfeiffer, Jeff Goldblum
obviously.
are, like, height of their power right around then.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Glover done Lethal Weapon, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Danny Glover was big. But yeah, Sandra Bullock hadn't done, like, Miss Congeniality yet. Patrick Stewart hadn't done X-Men.
Yeah, but Patrick Stewart had done plenty of other things. He'd been
Oh, yeah, he was
Star
still
Trek.
huge. Oh, Steve Martin was also big.
Soundtrack by Steven Schwartz. It won an Oscar for Best Original Song, When You Believe, in 1999. That's dope. Not the soundtrack, but the score is another common Hans Zimmer W. Didn't know he did the score, dude. Like, he just be popping up and stuff I enjoy. I don't know how he does it. Budget of $60 million. It grossed $101 million domestically in US and Canada, and $218 million worldwide, like total, so that includes US and Canada. So it did more than well, and I'm glad for that. Kudos, DreamWorks. I saw this a lot as a kid. We have the DVD, which is how I watched it this time. Put a lot of effort into the menu animations. I forgot about that. Everything you're going through, like going to like the subtitles, like they have an animation for that. And playing music, and it's dope. I enjoyed it then when I was a kid, but connected with it so much more now as an adult, and understand a lot more now. And I'll explain what I mean in my topic. I miss 2D animation movies that could make bank, bro. Like DreamWorks did a pretty good job competing with Disney in their 2D animated department between this, El Dorado, and I'll count Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, because I'm biased. We have yet to do that on the pod, but we will soon. I want to give this a bit of time to breathe between kind of like the same amount of time we did between this and El Dorado.
Sinbad was my go-to also. It's so good.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce... I didn't know how stacked that... Brad Pitt is Sinbad. I didn't understand.
Brad Pitt. Oh my god.
We'll show Evan that soon.
I have seen it. I just was like really little when I saw it.
So you didn't see it. Okay, got it.
No, I did. Okay.
If he doesn't love it the way that we did, he hasn't seen it.
Yeah, right. I'm pretty sure Eris in that movie awakened things in some people. Anyway, what are you guys' things with this?
So yeah, I don't remember the first time I saw this, which I feel like is becoming a recurring thing with a lot of these movies we're doing, but I do love it. I went to Catholic school, so I definitely think that I saw it for the first time in class at some point on a VHS, which is honestly great because then I got to watch it with the whole class. It was a lot of fun. I definitely watched it, I feel like a lot as a kid, and then not so much as an adult until like recently. But watching it again, it's so familiar. It kind of feels like this is one of those things that I should be watching like every year, like at least a couple times. Because it's a fast watch, but it's also like just really rich with the animation and the storytelling and the character work and everything. And like, I know the story because I went to school and like they taught us this stuff over and over again. It's very familiar, and the music and the cast and everything, it's like a very, in some ways, very heartwarming, and I enjoy that. And it does also remind me of Sinbad, I think mainly because of the animation and just like the way I feel like DreamWorks was very unique in the way that they animated their 2D stuff. Everything feels like very painting like it feels like a lot of brushwork goes into it. There's a lot of like fluid motion, which I appreciate even way back in like 98, which I love. And I feel like they have a lot of things with like wisecracking protagonists, which I tend to really appreciate. So yeah, no, I love this movie. And I'm glad we're finally talking about it.
So I also saw this a lot as a kid. This is one of the first movies I ever remember seeing. We owned it on VHS, and like I feel like either this or Tarzan was probably like my first favorite movie.
Or
When I
Sinbad.
was like 3. It was no,
Or
Sinbad
Sinbad.
wasn't even out yet at the time.
But it should have been your favorite even back in 98.
Yeah, I don't know what.
I wasn't even born in '98, so but
Oh my
I
god,
don't
please
tell
don't
me
say
that.
that. Please don't
Please
say
stop.
that, dude. Jeez.
Evan, go home.
all right. I was 3 weeks late. I would have been there if I could. It seemed like a good time. I'm sure this was my first exposure to this story, but I also went to Catholic school a lot and was raised Catholic, so I heard this story in many other forms. But I think the reason I feel like this must have been burned in my brain for it is I feel like I remember asking where the horse race was in some for some other version, because I was like, that's the best part of the movie. Like, what about the part? Like, what? Oh, okay, I guess that's not, because I loved that so much as a kid. In preparing for this, I realized how much this actually like has kind of been cemented as like what I think of with this story, because I had to remind myself what is actually different. I reread the section of Exodus that this is based on in the past few days, and there are a few differences, but there were some things that I are from this movie that I assumed are actually like part of the core of it, and they aren't. But I really loved revisiting this. I don't know if I'd seen it since I was maybe like 7 all the way through, but I remembered a lot of it because I rewatched it so much as a kid. I'll echo you guys on the animation. This looks great. Even, what is it now, 27 years later almost?
Yeah, 27 now.
Sorry to make us all feel old.
That's
But
my age.
It's as old as my brother, and it's scary.
yeah, it's slightly older than me, which is also scary. But in terms of like the 2 and 3D, I've rewatched a few other 2D things from this era where they were like kind of blending 2D and 3D. And this looks a lot better, I think, than other ones of the time, like El Dorado and Treasure Planet, and maybe Atlantis, but I don't know that one quite as well. But like the parts that have 3D, and there's way more of it than I remember. Like I feel like almost every scene has some 3D elements, where, or at least like obvious 3D.
The only part of that that stood out to me was like the basket, honestly. I think like you're right that it looks better, but I feel like there just wasn't as much 3D in this one. I could be wrong.
But if you look at the way like the 2D is incorporated, like especially that opening chariot, well, it's not the opening, but the chariot race at the beginning, there's a lot of camera moves in that you wouldn't see in a lot of other 2D animations, and like elements moving through, like, when the nose breaks off of the
nose
Sphinx
is 3D.
statue.
Yeah,
And then
you're right.
when the sand slides down, like it all looks really
3D.
good and it looks of a piece, but like I could feel the 3D, but it felt a lot more integrated
The
than
water's
like,
3D.
yeah, the water. But it felt a lot better than something like the end of El Dorado, where like all the gold on the ship as it's like falling off just doesn't, like, it looks wrong. It looks like almost green screen.
Aladdin.
Aladdin
That
does
was
it a
another
bit,
from that
yeah.
time.
The cave.
The carpet looked like a video game.
Yeah, I didn't watch that as much as a kid, nor as recently, so
I had the VHS.
I think this holds up really well, though, in terms of animation and basically every other aspect. I would kind of expect the animation to age a lot worse than it did, and I wish we could still do this, because I think 2D animation looks great. And I understand that, like, Jelani, you might be able to speak to this better since you took some animation in college, but, like, from what I've heard, 3D is way easier on animators. It's so much smoother production-wise that I kind of get why they do it, but I still like the look of 2D. And there's great looking 3D animation, but I wish we kept this too.
I didn't stick around long enough to get to where animating became easier, or maybe it just didn't come to me naturally. Yeah, from what I hear as well, it's way easier to animate 3D. And it makes sense because you got a computer doing it for you. There's a bunch that goes into it, like rigging, making it so this model has a skeleton that you can move pieces of, like an action figure. And there's keyframing and all of that. But yeah.
I've never even stepped my toe into that, so I'm always impressed by it. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I do miss this kind of animation, and I hope it comes back someday.
I mean, anime is still doing it. Shout out to Japan.
Yeah, and I mean, that all looks good too, but like there is also, like, this is kind of the American style of 2D animation, and I feel like nothing really does the American style 2D anymore. And that's not to, like, compare the two, we just kind of still have one and don't have the other.
There's nothing like good old American.
Nothing like good old American. Let me crack a Bud Light over here.
Red-blooded 2D animation.
Red-blooded 2D animation. Let me go drive my truck that runs on Miller Lite.
Was that? Oh,
that was the end of my notes. Okay. Oh, actually, one more. I don't know if we'll bring this up later, but I just wanted to shout out the parallel visuals of Moses and Ramses at the end of the Plague song. God, that goes hard. That is such a good... Like, a lot of things go hard in this movie. I especially wanted to shout out that shot. It's so good. Where, like, their faces are, like, split down the middle, and then it divides... Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very Broadway, I feel like. Like, there's a part, too, where, like, there's spotlights above them, and they're, like, on a stage next to each
right
other,
after
but,
that
like,
shot, they're, like, on like, ledges.
It's so good. It's so good. And, since we're talking about animation, I love that the wall painting scene, where, like, Moses is having a dream about, what actually happened early in his life, and it's, like, you're seeing all of the Egyptian hieroglyph pictures and stuff, like all of them moving. It's so good. Like, you don't see a lot of that anymore either, that like blending of different animations within one thing. They'll usually just do the one thing, but in this they took the time to like do a whole sequence like that, and I love that.
Only things I can think that do that are The Amazing World of Gumball, and I feel like Spider-Verse does it, right? With
Spider-Verse does it.
The second Spider-Verse does, yeah.
I think there's maybe I'm not seeing the exact aspect you're talking about, but I feel like they do that in Moana at the beginning too. They have like a little history
I've never
thing.
Seen it.
They do in Moana, you're right.
It doesn't hit quite the same, but it's kind of a similar thing where they're like taking the art style of like this culture and like imitating it a little bit for a while.
You know what's more common? I think it's a prologue in Moana. I think it's like they kind of are narrating and telling the story at the beginning, so it's not like it's happening in the middle. It feels kind of separate, which is also cool and also really good. But in this, they've established like this is what the animation looks like, and now we're doing something different for a minute to like highlight this moment and make it seem more surreal and dreamlike, and then we're gonna go back.
Yeah. On that note, this movie might have also like sparked my interest in like ancient Egypt as a kid, because I remember being really into pyramids, and like it feels kind of messed up to say looking back as an adult, because like that whole society was like built on the backs of slavery, but like also ancient Egypt is really cool. Like pyramids are just cool.
So is this society.
That too, but we don't have. I mean, I guess we have a lot to show for it, but we don't have pyramids.
We don't have pyramids, no.
I mean, there's some cool buildings in Washington, D.C., but, like, nothing... We have an obelisk, which is just ripping off Egypt, and everything else is just ripping off Greek architecture.
Basically.
And Vegas is ripping off everything.
Oh, yeah. Including a lot of... What's the one that rips off Egypt there? Because isn't there a thing with a sphinx there?
There is.
They have a sphinx, and they have a pyramid. They have a pyramid there.
Yeah, there's the Luxor pyramid. Is it... Or maybe it's the Luxor pyramid.
They have a Caesar's palace, too, so they rip off Greece. They rip off everything.
We are going to try our best to be as non-controversial as possible. I think I speak for all of us.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm too scared to be controversial, but also, like, yes, we want to be as respectful as we can be.
Yeah. I seek not to be controversial. I am no longer Catholic, but, like, I do still appreciate this story, but I don't think any of us are coming at this from the angle of any specific religion.
No.
But, I mean, I'm certainly going to be biased, I guess, in, like, the fact that I learned this through a Roman Catholic lens, which is probably different than other people. Like, you know, outside of this movie.
Outside
like, the way
of,
I was taught this story. So that might just be worth acknowledging.
You also know why we're not gonna attack this movie? Because the movie didn't try to attack us. I made a note of that later in my notes, but like
Hmm.
this
Agreed.
movie, despite it being about the Christian God, or well, it's a couple of different gods, not just Christian. Like this God covers a couple of religions, right?
Yeah, all the
Yes.
Abrahamic ones. So
Yeah,
Islam, Judaism, and Christianity.
yeah. I don't think this movie is about converting its audience to a religion, which is a point for it. It's more just about telling the story of Moses and his journey. And you know that religions or cultures that involve slavery may not be that great. Just saying. I also like that God in the movie. He's not like, and this is Old Testament God. I know he was. I'm just gonna say different as opposed to like the New Testament God.
Hmm.
So the God in this movie, he's like, he ain't like you gotta worship me. He's just like, let the slaves go, bro. They're with me. Like, what are y'all doing?
Direct quote from the Bible.
Direct quote.
Direct quote.
I wish, dude. Anyway, that's under my topic. Approaching this religious story like a movie. It begins with "Deliver Us" the song and message from Moses' Hebrew family, setting up Moses' purpose from the very beginning. Call it a hero's journey. Shout out to Reedsy, because they're the example I use to break it down. Although I don't think everything on their list was presented in this movie like exactly clearly, which isn't an issue. They had 12 points. Starts with the ordinary world, which is just meeting the protagonist. That's what Moses is. That ordinary world for him is just what we're introduced to him as an adult, with Evan's favorite scene with the horse race.
Child me's favorite scene. I don't know if I would
The horse
say that
race is
today.
pretty cool.
It's pretty
I still
good.
enjoy it, but
Although,
like
what is
3-year-old
it-
me thought it was the greatest thing ever.
What is it with animated movies, though, and having its protagonist race through the city, putting countless citizens in danger? I feel like that happens a lot. It
Happens in
feels very
Chicken Little.
familiar.
Yeah,
Why do you remember anything from Chicken Little?
because we watched it. And,
I don't remember that movie.
Well,
Oh wait,
I don't
you know
know
what? Don't go into detail. Never mind.
Yeah, well, it happens in that. It happens in Hercules, kind of.
Oh, that's another one I've never seen.
Sort of Mulan. I mean, not exactly that, but like there's elements of it there. She messes things up in the center of town.
There's always a lot of like running around through like a marketplace or like just a city street, and like people are getting knocked over.
I'm glad he's not making the DreamWorks like one eyebrow up, snarky face on any of the promotional material. I don't think they were doing that just yet.
No, well, this was one of like the first things that they made. I think it was like Ants, and then this might have been like their second thing. I know I remember hearing that like part of how Shrek was made was like everyone who wasn't working on Prince of Egypt was working on Shrek. Like this was their big one, and then Shrek was like, we don't really care if this is good.
Yeah, I heard Shrek was a punishment.
I don't know if it was a punishment, but it was kind of like you weren't as good if you were working on Shrek was kind of the idea, or it was like
Wow.
like they really build it as a lower priority, which is so ironic
Yeah.
because it's been like their biggest money maker.
It's insane. It's still one of their biggest franchises.
They have a fifth one. Next beat, Call to Adventure, meeting Miriam and her telling Moses the truth. Refusal of the call. I looked up the hero's journey, and I was scrolling through just the top images, and like none of them had the refusal, and I remember specifically refusal of the call being like one of the major things to it.
Hmm.
So that's why I use this version. Refusal of the call was all I ever wanted. The song, that whole section, it started with him pretty much being in denial, and then by the end of it you hear the tone in his voice where he's like questioning himself by the end of it. Meeting the mentor, Jethro or God, this is one of the hazier ones. Crossing the first threshold, leaving the kingdom. That dude really left the kingdom without a plan. He found out the truth, and then Ramses was like, "Nah, don't go," and he was like, "I can't be here," and he just left. He didn't know where he was going. He just walked. Like, okay, man. I mean, he lives, so good job. Also, I'd switch the position of crossing the first threshold, this one, and meeting the mentor, because story-wise, that it lines up more with this movie specifically. Tests, allies, enemies, Zipporah, Miriam, Aaron, all of the supporting cast. Innermost Cave, I thought this meant something else, but this is about like him coming close to his goal. Moses almost gets Ramesses to see a sigh by reminiscing with him when they're speaking in the thing.
Not to take it too literally, but I wonder if that could be put onto the burning bush scene. Because I don't know the hero's journey perfectly, but I've heard that beat, and I feel like it's usually at the midpoint, which I'm pretty sure is where the burning bush scene is here.
Yeah, it's about there.
From what I know of it, I think it's supposed to be like you enter the cave and then you leave with like some newfound realization or skill or like ability or something. Maybe the version that you're looking at doesn't list it all like that.
It doesn't describe it like that, but that makes more sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, it is a literal
Considering
cave,
it's a literal
so
cave,
that might be locking me into that more than it should. But I also feel like this is kind of the model it goes off of, so maybe that's why they call it that.
Ordeal, the plague, followed by the... I don't know what to call the night. I just called it the night smite. Where he went around killing the first
Yeah.
Reward, the Hebrews are freed. The road back, the Red Sea. Resurrection, I don't think there's almost all of these heroes' journey things had a resurrection towards the end, and I'm like, I don't think there was a resurrection at all.
Yeah.
The closest we have is when he leaves the kingdom and roams the desert, but that's like earlier in the movie, so maybe it's that point. Maybe they just moved it around. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not familiar with this particular phrasing for a lot of this stuff. I'm more familiar with like the Save the Cat model, but I feel like Resurrection, like maybe it could be like right after Ramses is like, "You have my permission to go," and then he's outside, he's crying because of what he had to do, and then they have the song, and then he's like not at peace with everything necessarily, but at the very least he achieved what he was there to do, and now everyone's kind of free. So there's at least like somewhat of a silver lining, even though he is in a lot of pain at the time.
So you switch Resurrection and the road back then, because the Red Sea was the road back, so...
Yeah, I would say, I mean, again, I'm not super familiar with these particular terms, but I would say maybe I would. Yeah, I mean, the good thing too is, like, it doesn't ever need to follow each of these beats exactly.
None of these
A
stories
lot of
do,
the time
no.
they'll be switched around, or, like, stuff will be missing. That's why, like, the Save the Cat model's a little different. There's ones that have, like, 40 beats. There's ones that have, like, 10 different versions of the same thing. And you can kind of weave them around. It's more meant to be, like, a framework, right? Than anything else.
Yeah. What terms are you guys familiar with? I don't remember. I know we were taught in Screenwriting 1, The Hero's Journey. Was it Screenwriting 1, Evan? I don't remember if it was 1.
I don't know that I was. We were taught 3-act structure. I don't think I've ever actually had a class that specifically taught me the hero's journey. I've heard it referenced, but I never actually studied it.
Same.
The structure models that I looked at, I didn't use Save the Cat specifically, but I used a very similar one when I was very first learning it. And it kind of referenced a few things that I know are like pulled from the hero's journey, but they didn't use the same terminology. In a lot of cases, it's kind of like different ways of looking at the same thing. Like if you want to create a model that's like, this is what all stories do, then you're gonna have some overlap and just different names for the same concept in a lot of places. That's probably not really an answer to your question, but that's the best I have.
Yeah, same. I never studied the hero's journey specifically because, like, the whole Joseph Campbell hero's journey kind of thing.
That's what I was looking at first, but I was like, oh.
Yeah, George Lucas worked with that, like, very directly when he did Star Wars. So that's why it's, like, it's referenced so much as far as, like, studying 3-act structure and things like that. Because a lot of 3-act structure since then bases stuff on the hero's journey. It pulls a lot from that. It just uses different terms to fit more in line with, like, movie structure, but like that wouldn't work the same as in like a novel, but you could also have a hero's journey in a novel, right? I feel like the 3-act structure itself is very heavily pulling from the hero's journey, but it's not one-to-one. And a lot of times, like, there are little bits missing, even if like the grand scope of things, like, you can kind of vaguely follow this pattern.
Yeah, and in terms of like the resurrection beat, so the model you're going off has it at the end, which I think sometimes is the case, but
a lot of them do. I didn't understand it. Like, if you just look up Hero's Journey, the top images will show you Resurrection at the very end. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not quite seeing that as like a super common placement for that beat, because as I'm thinking about it, like most like archetypal hero stories have some sort of, because I hear resurrection and I think like rebirth, like you come out
Yeah,
as a new version, become like your final
become what
form
you
in
are
a
at the
way, if you
end type
will.
thing, right?
Yeah, but that happens at different places in a lot of stories. Peter Parker, that happens like end of Act 1, he becomes Spider Man. Miles Morales, it's not until the end of Act 2. Iron Man, it's about halfway through. Like his resurrection pretty much happens when he gets home from the desert, which I'd say is about the midpoint. Harry Potter, I would say that happens like at the very end. Like that's the only resurrection, and that's a literal one in that case, where it's like literally the last chapter of the last book is when he dies and is reborn in some way.
Spoilers.
Yeah, well,
I'm kidding. I don't.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the resurrection in that it's more like overcoming the specific conflict of whichever specific story this is. So like in Spider-Man, right? His resurrection would be more like when he like pulls himself up and he beats Green Goblin at the end of Spider-Man 1, let's say, as opposed to like when he becomes Spider-Man, because when he becomes Spider-Man, that's more of like him jumping into the journey itself, and this is him like the moment when somehow they overcome all of that and they become who they need to be to finish the mission, you know? So that's kind of what I see that as.
you could definitely make that argument. I just was thinking of it as like the hero's like point of greatest change can come at a lot of different places in the story, I think. And for this one, like you were saying, Jelani, I don't really see any beat at the end that's really a resurrection for Moses. If there's anything that feels like a resurrection, it's when he goes into the desert for the first time and like everything between meeting Jethro and the burning bush. That feels like a resurrection beat, at least for like my interpretation of that
Yeah.
word. Certainly more than anything near the end does.
Yeah, I would even say the burning bush thing is like closer to like he finds new purpose type thing. But again, that's
But
more of
that's the
like the
cave.
midpoint.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's the
cave.
cave. That's
the
the thing.
innermost cave.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of why I don't love marrying myself to these structure models. I always tell people, learn it, but like take it with a big pinch of salt. And I remember like when I first learned 3-act structure, trying to be like, oh yes, everything does have to be this way. And after like a few months or maybe a year of that, I was like, this doesn't feel right. These don't really work. They're still good to know, but it's a way to look at a protagonist's arc, but I feel like it locks things into place a little bit too much.
Is it gonna taste better with salt?
I mean, there's a balance. Sometimes you need a lot of salt to make something taste good. Sometimes you only need a little.
You should take it. I don't understand what. I've never understood what that meant.
Yeah, I don't
Take it
either,
with a
come to
grain
think
of
of
salt.
it. But
Take it with a pinch of salt. Well, we're not eating.
I admire the
anything
confidence
here.
to use the metaphor anyway, even if you didn't know
Yeah.
what it meant.
there's a lot of metaphors. Why are we beating around a bush? I don't know what that's about.
A burning bush.
Oh, right.
Movie reference. Oh, random thought I had also, speaking of the burning bush scene, I like how it's not just fire, it's like some kind of weird purple energy. I thought that was really cool.
It's also it has like reflections of water against the walls,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah,
as if
looks
there
very
was a
aquatic.
pool in the room. It's cool. I like how his realization wastes no time. Like I didn't realize how quickly his life turns upside down from where he's from. You got the race, you got them talking to the dad, and then he's named like Prince Scene, and then right after that he meets his sister on the way out of the kingdom. It's really quick. I really love how much, and this might fall into Eva's topic a little bit, but I really love how much his brother cares for him, despite the moral issues. When Ramesses says he can make it so Moses accidentally killing a slaver never happened, their established strong bond makes the split that happens later on so much more tragic. Also, when Ramesses tells Moses, please, before Moses leaves, like that made me teary-eyed. My dad loved to point out whenever we would watch this movie when I was younger how powerful moments of this movie were, like just how powerful they were. That moment where he tells him please, and then the Through Heaven's Eyes song, like I really get that now. And I'll explain that more in a sec. There's a lot of good lessons to be had in this movie as well, not just from a religious standpoint. especially for what's classified as a kids movie. I really think it's for all ages. So to quote a few points in the movie, when the gods, or this is when the mother was speaking, when the gods, God, the universe, whatever you believe, sends you a blessing, you don't ask why it was sent. If you do, that's from experience the easiest way to lose a blessing. Look at your life through heaven's eyes. That entire song, just that song. I mean, I text you guys. You didn't respond, but I text you guys.
I was asleep.
That full on just made me cry. I tried.
I
to
thought
hold
I
it
responded.
In,
I'm sorry.
no, you're.
I was
agree.
waiting
The
for the
song's
episode
beautiful.
because I also love it. I think it's such a beautiful song.
All the songs in this are so good.
No, every single there. I have never once in a movie. I think Mulan was close, but never once in a movie have I ever not rolled my eyes whenever a certain song comes on, because every song in this movie hits. Every song in this movie is a banger, and they don't overstay their welcome. That's very important. They're all like 2 minutes or less. I think the longest one might be the Plague one, and that's so important. So I don't care, and that's another bang. They're all bangers. So to quote a part from that song in this whole lesson subtopic: if a man loses everything he owns, has he truly lost his worth, or is it the beginning of a new and brighter birth? So how do you measure the worth of a man in wealth or strength or size, in how much he gained or how much he gave? The answer will come. The answer will come to him who tries to look at his life through heaven's eyes. So personally, this is where I am at. Currently fighting against putting my self-worth in material things outside of myself. So that issue with self-worth is part of what contributes to my ongoing struggle with depression. And the song struck me at the time it needed to, so I think that's also why it hit me as hard as it did. And then there can be miracles when you believe. That's not even religion-based, that's just the law of the universe, straight up. There's more on that, but I won't go into that because people can argue that all day, but I don't feel like it. I mean, I was ranting for a while going through my notes, but do you guys have some other things on this this topic? I wanted to start with the hero's journey, but I just had a lot of just notes in general about the movie as a whole.
I want to start by seconding your note from a lot earlier of, like, I really appreciate that this story isn't trying to be propaganda and isn't trying to convert anyone. It is infinitely better for that. And I feel like just in hearing people talk about this, looking at reviews on Letterboxd, like, this is loved by people regardless of their faith. Like, there are plenty of people who are not religiously affiliated, myself included, who love this movie. And I think people who are affiliated with, like, the religions that do look to this story as, like, a important part of their history, like, it hits for all of them too. And that's great. There are very few religious stories that I particularly, like, movie adaptations that I feel like you can say that for. Also, to second your point on the songs, like, I really love that the songs are in the spirit of what, like, the story's message can be. Like, as far as I can tell, I don't think, like, the lyrics are pulled from scripture in most cases. A lot of that is because, I mean, it wasn't written in English, so nothing in it rhymes in English, and all of these rhyme. But they feel like, especially through Heaven's Eyes, feels like it could come from whatever Bible you ascribe to, like, depending on which religion. Like, it feels very in keeping with that, but is original. And I love the imagery in that song. Like,
My dad, he would replay just the beginning line of that scene like 3 times over. What was it? The tapestry line.
a single thread in a tapestry, though its color brightly shine, something.
A single
Can't
thread
see
in a
its-
tapestry. He would keep replaying that section over. He was like, y'all don't get what that means.
It's such a beautiful image, though, and I love it, especially as, like, you were kind of saying how it hits for you. I feel like the way that song hits for me is, like, especially with where Moses is at in the story, I don't feel like the song itself is necessarily about forgiveness, but I feel like Jethro is saying all of these things to Moses as a, like, part of his process of forgiving himself. The framing line of that song is, you did X, Y, and Z. Maybe you aren't looking at what you've done in the right way. And that's what the whole beginning of the song is about. Like, you have a role to play here that you're probably never going to understand. And I love the images that they use. Like, there's another one about, like, the rock that sits at the top of a mountain. Is it any greater than the one that holds the base?
That form the base, yeah.
What a beautiful image to use. And again, I don't think that's from anything literally in scripture, but it feels like it could be. Like, it's very much in... The Plague song takes a lot from actual scripture, because they're just speed running the plagues, which I was rereading it, and the plagues take a long time. It's a good idea that they put it in a montage, because...
Did they take that long?
In the actual scripture, yeah, they take quite a long time, because it's just like, God said, go to Pharaoh, tell him to let people go, or I'm going to send locusts. So Moses went to Pharaoh and said he's going to send locusts. So it takes,
and then
it does every single thing every single time.
I forgot they
and
did
you don't
it step
need
by step, like every little thing over and over again, like very repetitive.
Yeah, it would be like that scene in Doctor Strange at the end when he goes to Dormammu. Like, if they had it play out exactly, because it's exactly the same beat 10 times over. And then finally Pharaoh lets them go. So really smart to speed run the first 9 plagues. Also, the song just goes so hard. Like, it's such a good song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That was another point I wanted to make. This is a smart choice for which Bible story to adapt. Mostly in terms of length, but also, like, it's so cinematic. Like, I think this was always my favorite Bible story as a kid, because it's just cool. Like, there's nothing as, like, visually cool as the plagues. There's a few things, but most of them don't have something
That
like...
sounds really crazy out of context. Keep going on.
Yeah. Well, but you don't have something like... And then a horde of frogs came out of the river, and then hail came from the sky. It's like... There's a few things like that, but nothing on the scale of, like, parting the Red Sea.
Fire tornadoes, parting the Red Sea, burning... But yeah,
Yeah.
There's some crazy stuff that happens in this that is not really in... At least not in a visual sense in other Bible stories. But also most of them are just, like... I was thinking about just other biblical movie adaptations. And this story's been adapted 3 times into, like, major movies. You have this, you have the 10 Commandments from the 50s... And then there was that Exodus Gods and Kings movie that Ridley Scott did like 10 years ago. I saw it and don't really remember it. I also saw the 10 Commandments a long time ago and don't remember that very well either.
Was that Bale?
Christian Bale is Moses
in
the Ridley Scott one. I don't remember it very well, but Ridley Scott wanted to make it a Ridley Scott movie, and I don't think that was the move. I was thinking about, like, why is this the one? Like, it's pretty much this, and then, like, the nativity story of Jesus' birth, and then the crucifixion are pretty much the 3 that really get told.
Yeah, you've got, like, Passion of the Christ and, like, all that.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, like, why don't they do others? And then I realized, like, well, because they don't really work as movies. There's not enough there.
They tried Noah. I mean,
they did, and I haven't
Noah.
seen that one.
I haven't either. I've heard that it's, like, okay. I've heard that
Wait, I
it's
saw
okay.
the one with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw
the one with Russell Crowe. Yeah.
I don't
Was it
remember.
good? Because, like, that's one that I feel like, I think on paper, that sounds like a really good movie, but I'm thinking about, like, the actual beats of what I remember from the story. I feel like there's not a lot there.
There's not.
Outside of the flood itself that I can really think of as far as, like, Noah's, like, character or, like, the journey he goes on. Like, it feels very quick.
Cain and Abel is adapted, but it's in... I think it tends to be, like, a side story or, like, referenced or, like, an homage.
In Noah? They do that?
No. Just in stories in general. Like, it's in Lucifer. They have, like, just straight up the characters of Cain and Abel in that show. I think that's another story, like the first murder or that thing, that between brothers thing. It's adapted too.
Yeah.
But not as outwardly direct as some of these other stories.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. Like, I struggle to come up with any other... Like, there's plenty of Bible stories out there that are pretty well known, but there's just not enough substance to them to fill an hour.
David and Goliath, that's another.
Yeah, well... Is there enough? Well, has that
I
been
think
done?
you
I
could.
just don't
I
know
think
of
you
it.
could do that as a movie. I feel like there's enough there, especially like with the way
You
they
gotta
expanded
stretch it
things
out,
here.
though. There's just not a lot of beats to it. Like, this story
Oh,
has a lot of beats to it.
they
It's
did Joseph
referenced
King of
though.
Dreams too. They
They,
did
oh
the
yeah.
DreamWorks also did Joseph King of Dreams.
I
I
think
was
that was
wondering, like, I knew they did another religious one.
I think I saw that, and then just I don't remember it very well. I saw it when I was like 9. I
It was the
think.
same style as this.
Yeah, I think
Right?
it was
Yeah,
direct to
yeah. I think
video.
it's also it's all yeah. It was direct to video. I think kind of pegged as like a companion piece to this. Like I think it came after. And I remember that story a lot as a kid too. There's a lot. I feel like there's a decent amount there. So I guess that kind of works.
And that also at least has like a lot of years in it. Like Joseph gets captured, brought to Egypt, and then ascends to like power. I guess that's an exception. That one has a lot of enough beats
I'm
to like fill out a runtime.
not familiar with that story. Is it? It's not the same Joseph that's Jesus's.
No, different Joseph. Earlier Joseph.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange choice. I feel like to follow up this movie because really, like his in terms of chronology, it's a prequel.
Yeah.
Like it happened. I don't know how long before the events of Exodus, but like I'm pretty sure most of the Bible's not chronological, but the first few books are. And I think the story of Joseph is at the very end of Genesis, and then this is the very beginning of Exodus. With I think there's a decent amount of time in between, and I don't know exactly how much.
I think there's at least a generation or two in between because
I think it might
that,
be
like,
more than that, but
yeah.
it's at least a couple generations. Anyway, I think this is a really smart choice as a story to adapt because if you don't pick a story like this, you kind of have two choices, which is either lump a whole bunch of Bible stories together and tell them all at once, which is not probably the best move unless you're Wes Anderson making whatever his next thing is, because he does that sometimes. But most people don't want that from their movies. Or you take a short story and then really pad it out and take a lot of artistic license, which we'll get to. Most Bible stories are told, like I had like books as a kid that would like tell a lot of these stories in one page because that's all there really is.
Yeah, like a kid's Bible with pictures and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, we had those.
Yeah, they would take about 2 minutes to read. But that's the format that most Bible stories are told in. At least, I mean, Christian Mass or Catholic Mass that I went to, you have the readings at the beginning that are like 2 minutes each, and it takes a passage from them. Most of those stories, whether it's a parable or like the main thing from one prophet, it doesn't take a lot of time to tell. This one, I remember those books would like break it up into a lot of those sections because you have to, there's a lot of beats to it. Like it takes a while to, even if you summarize this movie, it took you a few minutes to go through that summary there, Jelani. A lot of Bible stories, you can tell the beats of it in about 3 sentences.
Trying to say I'm long-winded?
I'm saying nobody could do it. Like this story is long enough that it can do that. Whereas like, I was thinking about like the story of is it Samuel or Eli? I think both of them are in it. It's the one where like the kid hears somebody calling him and he goes to the other guy and says, "Did you call me?" And the guy says, "No, didn't call you." That happens twice, and then he says, "Nope, it's the voice of God." So when he calls you again, answer as if it's God. That's the whole story. That like there's truly no more to it than that. I just summarized the whole thing, and I don't think the longest version of it is that much longer. You can't make a whole movie out of that. And that's the case for a lot of Bible stories. I'm kind of beating the point into the ground, so I'll move on.
Does Revelation have the 4 horsemen?
Yes.
Yep, but that's at the end.
That's when the whole world ends, right?
I think so, but that's supposed to be a whole vision that, like, one of the apostles has, I think. Like, some people speculate that it's actually just, like, he's tripping out because he's, like, abandoned in the desert and is just hallucinating. But I don't think there's much narrative structure to it, regardless of how you interpret it. It's just kind of like...
It's a lot of things happening. I think there's a dragon in it, but I could be wrong. But I think there's a dragon
There's a dragon in the Bible?
Yeah, I think there is.
so.
I remember one of the churches I went to growing up had something... Maybe it was split, like a split thing of, like, it had 4 quadrants, one for each of the evangelists. Because I think each of the 4 evangelists that wrote the Gospels have, like, a different symbol or like animal associated with them, and I think one of them is a dragon, and I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure that's taken from Revelations. I forgot about that until you said it, but I think you're
Yeah,
right.
that's one of those
Somebody
I'm not like.
correct us. If we're wrong, someone correct us.
Yeah, that I feel like that's also one of the ones that like you're not going to hear a passage from Revelations in church. So like that's the one that
Uh,
people are probably the least familiar with.
no, there's many more books that never get touched. Revelations, I think there's a couple things. People like know some things from it. I don't think anyone can tell you what happens in Maccabees. I certainly can't.
Is that a
No,
book?
I forgot
That's a book.
Maccabees was a thing.
Well, there's a ton of books that like you look at a Bible and you're like, "Oh, there's a bunch of stories in there." A lot of the Bible is not stories. Like most of the New Testament is just copies of letters that were sent from like one apostle to some other town. You can't adapt
So many
that.
letters,
There's no stories there. It's just kind of like wisdom being shared. And then
so many
like
letters. Psalms too, a lot of
Psalms,
Psalms.
Proverbs, all of
Yep.
Leviticus. Like there's a whole bunch of books. Like I think Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers are all just like a whole list of rituals that the Hebrews were given after getting to the promised land. It's like, all right, here's exactly like the animals to sacrifice. Like there's a ton of the Bible that's just that, or like genealogies.
There's so many names and people that are named very similar things, and it
Like
gets
two
it,
Josephs? Thanks.
yeah. There's a bunch of Josephs, there's a bunch of Aarons and Sarahs. There's a lot.
Which book is Jesus in?
He's in the Gospels.
Yeah, he is in the Gospels.
And then I
Yeah,
think he
there's
might be in
four of
some of Acts
those.
of the Apostles. Yeah, the Gospels are all also like just all kind of retreading the same ground. It's just
Oh
four
yeah, they're all
different.
the same story from like
It's from
vaguely
different
different
perspectives,
perspectives.
yeah.
But they were all, I think a lot of them were there at the same time, so I think a lot of it was like it's a lot of the same thing, if I remember correctly.
They're almost like Venn diagrams that like mostly cross over, and then each one has like I think a couple of things that only happen in theirs. Somebody's probably gone and made that Venn diagram or something similar to it. Yeah, like a lot of the Bible is just like the history of the Jewish people throughout like everything from Abraham to Jesus. Like that's basically the Old Testament, and then a bunch of other stuff like Proverbs and Psalms and all the rituals and stuff. Most of it's just like different prophets, I think. And then most of the New Testament, aside from the Gospels, is just letters from one of the apostles to somebody, either
Yeah,
like a
St. Paul
king
to
or
the
like some town.
Corinthians or,
Yeah.
something like that. Just to piggyback on what you guys were saying about the songs too. Like especially Heaven's Eyes, I forgot how good that was until I heard it again. And one of the things that I stood out to me more than I think what we were talking about before was that like I love that line, it will come to him who tries. They're making an effort to point out that it's really about the effort in trying to be someone good and forgive yourself as opposed to actually accomplishing it, which I don't think is always highlighted very much in a lot of these scriptures, at least not from what I remember. I really appreciated that. And like the whole looking through heaven's eyes thing, I think it emphasizes like in their view, like God, the universe, like everybody does love you. And it's really just about like putting in the effort to be a good person. I think that that's a big part of this, and I really like that. As far as structurally, I didn't think of it like too much in terms of the hero's journey, but a lot of that is there. A lot of the basic like three act structure is there, and I think it works really well. I want to talk about that a little bit more when we get to artistic license stuff. I think that one of the good choices they made is kind of what they choose to focus and stay on and what they choose to speed through a little bit. Because I think the really relevant stuff is like the character stuff that makes us kind of stay with Moses, and they spend a lot of time on that. Like, I didn't realize how much of like the stuff I remember, so like, the whole going into the desert thing, the plague stuff, like how much of that is really just a small chunk of this compared to like setting up his life as a prince of Egypt and setting up his relationship with Ramses, setting up the emotional journey of everything before we actually get to, the stuff that I remember being a much larger part of the story. I think there'd be the temptation if they did this in like a live action adaptation to focus a lot on like him coming back and bringing the plague down and everything like that would be a much bigger part of the movie. And I think the choice to skip through that a little faster and frame it in the sense of like two brothers having to go to battle with each other. I think that was a much better option because we're focusing a lot on Moses as a person. It can come off a lot like a history book, and I think that there would have been the temptation to turn this into like a big, like 3 hour Ridley Scott type epic in other cases. And I think that the fact that they chose to focus on the smaller moments as opposed to, the big operatic stuff is probably the best idea.
It's also, I think, just wise in terms of story beats. Like, I was kind of saying this before with the plague scene. That's really just one story beat. You don't need to focus on each plague individually, especially because the collective trauma that is being induced is kind of what matters in the end anyway. The point of it is God is sending all of these horrible things at the Egyptians, and Pharaoh is still being obstinate and not letting the Hebrews go. You don't need to drag that out. And the song does it really effectively. You do need to spend a bit more time setting up Moses early on if we're going to understand where he's going. And again, we'll get to this in artistic license because there's not a lot there to work with in the Bible of like what is Moses like growing up, what is he like before he leaves. We do get stuff for after that point, but I think it's smart where they put their focus in terms of time. So, and it still gives scale to playing the hits. Like if you grew up with, I mean, I don't have a great perspective on this just because this was my first exposure to this story. But if you grew up hearing this story, the plagues are probably, and the parting of the Red Sea, that's the part that you, I would assume, remember. And it still makes those feel epic and like memorable. But in terms of runtime, you don't need to give them that kind of space. So I think it's smart.
Man, it was so cool. I'm just thinking back to the scene. It was dope. I never understood why the fire tornado stopped because God really could have just held them there the whole time.
I was thinking that too this time. I was watching it again today before this, and I'm like, wait, did he run out of juice? Like, what's going on? Like,
God
or
ran
was
out of
it,
mana.
or was it so that we could get the cool scene of all of them running into the thing, and then the Red Sea like
water
closes in
came
on all the
back
soldiers
on top of itself, rushing down the water wall, and then flooded them all right behind. That was crazy.
Yeah, I think my brother pointed out actually that like, why doesn't God just close the sea behind them? Right? Like they don't. There's not enough of them that you need the entire Red Sea to be parted the entire time. Like,
I think God was going
gonna...
for style points.
I mean, you're honestly not far off. I think if you go based on what's in Exodus, like for all the plagues, he tells Moses like, "Go talk to Pharaoh. He's gonna say no, but I want to do this so that like
spoilers
people
God.
will know." And yeah, no, he does say that. He says like, "I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he'll say no." He's going to say no every time, and then he tells him before the 10th plague. He says, "Okay, this is the last one. He is going to let you guys go after this." But he does kind of say like, I'm doing this so that like your people will believe in me and the world will see that I am God over all of these Egyptian gods. I'm paraphrasing a lot, but there's a decent amount of that, and they don't really touch on that at all.
They don't do that.
I'm
here.
glad.
And I think that's
I'm
good.
glad.
I think that's good because I like imagine seeing that not only beat by beat just for time's sake, but like imagine seeing that as like God's being like, listen, I know that these first 9 plagues are not going to work.
But it's going to look really cool.
But it's going to look really cool. It's going to take us getting to the 10th most terrible plague for anything to work.
Listen, I got this 10 plague plan, Moses. You gotta hear me out.
I feel like Moses would be like, why don't we just skip to the last plague then? I don't understand. Why are we doing all of this? I think if they did that, for whatever reason, it would feel a lot less like it was the Pharaoh finally being worn down, as opposed to God just knows what's going to happen. And this is all a predetermined thing, which I think is a lot less interesting. I think it's good the way that they did it here. The way they efficiently set up so much of these scenes, too. Like, we don't need that much time between Moses and Ramses to understand their bond or to feel their relationship go up and down as much as it does, like, over the course of that. Like, I don't know what the actual runtime is as far as, like, when he comes back to when Ramses lets them go, but it can't be more than, like, 25-30 minutes. at the most. And that's with all the plague stuff, all of like them catching up, Ramses like not understanding why things can't go back to the way they were. They even
The
have a
snake
scene where they
scene.
almost the snake scene. They even have a scene where they almost
You're
reconcile.
playing with the
Oh,
big
and the
boy.
playing with the big boys
Oh, that's
now,
pretty.
which is like wow, good song.
We
But
haven't even
also
talked
like that's
about
a
that yet. I
really
loved that
we
one as
have
a
that
kid.
whole big musical number too in the middle of this, and somehow all of that is captured. And I feel like that's the thing with animated films too, because animated films by their nature seem to be significantly shorter than feature-length films. So they're kind of forced in some ways to do these things in a much tighter window. Maybe it's because they're more visually appealing in a lot of cases than some live action films are that it works so well, but it just kind of does. Like I don't know how else to describe it. They manage to do so many things within like such a short time frame, and it just works so well. I don't know how they do it.
I just want to go listen to Playing with the Big Boys now.
You're playing with the big.
Right?
It's so good. As a kid,
I
I
was
always just said
listening.
"rah" the whole time because that was
I
the
was
only
listening to the
one I could
playlist at work
understand.
today. I was listening to the playlist at work today, and they have like a hard rock version of the song too, and it's so good. I have to find it and send it to you guys. It's great.
Is it by Boys to Ben? Because I didn't listen to that, but I saw that it was like on the YouTube playlist.
I don't actually know. I was listening on Spotify, so maybe it was, but I'll look it up and I'll send it to you guys. But it's
Let
really good.
your people.
I've been listening to those songs like all week, and I'm gonna go back and listen to them again after this. They're so good.
I feel like it's one of those like playlists where the songs themselves fit what's going on so well that they almost blend into the movie, so you almost don't remember how many bangers are in this movie. Like I feel like Mulan, which we just did recently, is like you can pull out specific songs, but I feel
There's
like
only
now that
four
I've
of them
seen
also, and they're really
yeah,
quick.
exactly. I think this only has like 4 or 5 too. I don't think there's even a lot of songs.
No, it's Deliver Us. There's the Lullaby. There's All I
Part
Ever
of it too,
Wanted.
Deliver Us plays
Playing with the
twice. So
big
Deliver Us is
boys.
one song, but they play it twice in like different contexts. Like it's the
Yeah, playing
beginning
with the
song
big
and the
boys.
ending song. And then there's the lullaby. Then there
All
is
I Ever Wanted.
Through
Playing
Heaven's
with the big
Eyes.
boys. Through Heaven's Eyes. That's
So it's like
5.
6.
It's like
Yeah,
7.
okay. It's like a decent amount.
Yeah, I think
There's
it's
Thus
enough to
saith the
call it a
Lord.
musical.
The Plague one.
Like you might not. It's a little bit hard to call Mulan a full-on musical, but
No,
That's
this is a
true.
musical. I
you
count
can
this as a musical.
yeah. Even though
Yeah, it
I think there's
is.
only one or two where like characters are diegetically singing. A lot of it like I think Playing with the Big Boys is the only one that like it seems like a character is actually saying these
The
things
lullaby.
in
No, the
dialogue.
one
The
Miriam
lullaby
sings to
sing.
him.
Okay, yeah.
Miriam
Yeah.
sings to him not just a lullaby, but whatever song they're singing after Ramsey says that they can go. He's like coming down and he's sad.
Oh, that one
Um,
too. When You
that one
Believe.
too. Yeah, is it When You Believe? Okay, yeah.
Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston sang that. Fun
That was
fact.
the thing at
Hmm.
this time.
Let's go to artistic license.
So my topic is artistic license and what makes it work. In this specifically, like there's plenty of other examples of adaptations that change things from the source material, and people either like it or they don't like it. Personally, I think all the changes work here for a lot of reasons that we've already started talking about. From the original Exodus, there's a lot of differences. So in the original story, from the bits that I remember, like Moses was adopted by the royal family, but he wasn't necessarily like a prince. He was adopted by the pharaoh's daughter, I believe, not his wife, and so he wasn't the second pharaoh's adopted brother, as far as I know. And I think they only ever name one pharaoh in the original story. Again, not 100% sure, but the point is, he's not a prince in the original story. From what I know, he is also fully aware of his heritage growing up, and I believe he sort of chooses to. Evan, maybe you can speak more on that
Yeah,
because you
I
read it
was looking for
recently.
that when I reread it. It's not really clear whether he
It's not super
knows.
clear.
So one beat that this misses, I think I might be jumping ahead to one of your later notes, but they have like Miriam sees the Pharaoh's daughter rescue him and says, "Hey, I know someone who can raise him," and she brings him back to his real mom. But then
Right,
he
that I do
is
remember.
like,
Like, it's very likely that he was actually nursed by his real mother throughout childhood.
yeah, but it doesn't make any indication about like whether he knows that it was born as a Hebrew. The whole like revelation thing that they do in this movie, as far as I can tell, that has no basis in scripture. I think it's a good choice,
Oh
but
yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't
Well, that
really indicate strongly one way or the other if he knows, so I assume he does.
yeah, again, like we've talked about too, like there's not as much character in a lot of the biblical versions of these. There's a lot of like it's kind of written like an account of like this is what happened. The changes they make where they kind of like they make him closer with the family. They give him like a revelation later on so that his life is kind of turned upside down, more
Revelation.
emotional. Yeah, the Book of Revelation. That's what this is. They sort of create a better emotional basis for Moses here than you would get if you just went by the original story, especially making him closer with Ramses. I think that the creators had said like the from when they got this job, it was sort of like envisioned as sort of a brother and brother story, like to add sort of this emotional weight to everything where it becomes less about sort of the grand scheme of like freeing the slaves or like, he was chosen by God, then my whole life is the exact opposite of what I thought it was. And now that I know about this, I see how awful our society really is and how it's built off the back of something terrible. And a big thing is like the reason he's so disconnected from Ramses later is that, Ramses never had that revelation. He never had that sort of eureka moment where he understands, like, no, this really is bad. And, he's still looking at it from the basis of, like, how he was raised. And I think that's really what makes the movie work. Like, it's not just about, streamlining things or even, like, not necessarily making it, like, an overtly religious movie. Because, like we've talked about, it's really not. It's really more about this idea of, belief and, changing your ways to be a better person. And it makes it a lot more nuanced. But I think that the fact that they changed it to be more of a family oriented thing sort of adds to that weight. A lot of the focus here is on making Moses and Ramses like extremely close and the complicated relationship with their father. I think one thing that I forgot about in the original story that I think sets up Ramses' character really well, which I think is also important in like having a complex villain that you can sort of in some ways understand if not empathize with, is that they make it clear that his father is very overbearing and that he has all this pressure, and that try as hard as he might, there's a lot of points where he's very jealous of Moses because Moses gets to be a lot more carefree. He gets to spend a lot of his time goofing off. In that sense, he unintentionally, gets his brother into trouble.
He's also the youngest.
He
It'd be
is
like
also the
that.
youngest too. There's always that pressure. I'm the oldest too, and I get it. Like there's a lot of pressure in a lot of cases to sort of be the one who like takes care of everything, and I think it's a lot more literal here because obviously he's going to be the king, but they make very clear there's different expectations for Ramses, and I think that adds to why he takes so long to turn things around. Like it's not just stubbornness, it's that he can't break out of this need to please his father and to please like his legacy even after his father's gone. And like in a weird way too, Moses is actually his safe space too. Like he wants things to go back to the way things were so much because Moses was the only thing that kept him grounded. Even if Moses got him in trouble, he was also the only thing that made him feel like he could relax for just a second. He was the only one that was there for him emotionally as far as he was concerned. And now that Moses is gone, all he really has is being the Pharaoh. And now Moses comes back and is basically, as far as he sees it, he's like, well, you're just against me now. These are all little changes that I think really add a level of complexity that I feel like we wouldn't be as personally invested in the story if it was just a case of like, well, Moses discovers the whole system is bad and corrupt and he needs to, leave, and then God tells him you're going to free the slaves, and then we have 10 steps of God telling him plague, Pharaoh's going to say no, another plague, and, keep going from there. So, and like I said too, all of this is also done in a very, like, tight time window too. Like, we get a lot more of emotional stuff with their reunion and with Ramses losing his son, and we really see it, like, way on both of them, like, that neither of them really wants this. and it becomes a story of Moses in a weird way, like he's freeing his people, but he also has to destroy his home. So it's not like an easy thing for him to do. It just adds a lot of nuance to it that I really appreciate, and I don't think that I remember any other like Bible adaptations done that.
I mean, you touched on a lot of what I was going to get into in my topic with the relationship of Moses and Ramses. So I'll save my responses to that for that topic, but you covered a lot of it nicely. The main thing I was looking at in terms of artistic license, I like the characterization a lot. That's what my topic is. In terms of more objective changes they make, introducing Zipporah earlier, I think is just a good choice because she really fades into the background in the second half. So just giving her a little bit of something to do in Act 1 is good because there's really nothing in terms of what she does in scripture. Like, she doesn't really do anything.
Is she his wife in the
Yeah.
thing too?
Yeah.
In the description? Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing like what's in this movie. It's just she's Jethro's daughter. While Moses is in the desert, they get married. That's about it. After that point in this movie, she doesn't really do much. So she's almost completely original in terms of like what her character is and does. And you can't really mess with everything that happens in the second half. So I think it's a good call to give her a little bit in the first half. I also like where they end it. There's a lot more that they could have gone into, and I think this is a smart endpoint. The Ten Commandments movie continues beyond this point. I don't remember it super well, but I feel like it gives it a bit of a weird act structure because the main conflict is done after
The Red Sea is the climax. Yeah.
Yeah. And it feels like a long falling action to have going into the desert, getting the Ten Commandments, everything with the golden calf. And actually, Moses' story, if you take it all the way to the end of his life, he has kind of a tragic end. I don't remember exactly what he does to anger God, but he's not allowed to go to the promised land. He gets to like see it from a distance towards the end of his life and never actually gets to go there.
Does he break a commandment?
He does something to disobey God. I don't remember what it is. I don't think it's the golden calf. I think he punishes the Israelites because the golden calf thing happens.
No, I think he punishes them for the golden calf because that's when he comes down. I think he goes up to the mountain to get the commandments, and when he comes down, he's been gone long enough that they started worshiping a golden calf.
I think that's actually Aaron's responsibility. Like, he kind of leaves Aaron in charge, and they all get upset, and he's like, here you go. Here's your new god. It's a golden calf. And then
he doesn't like know what to do.
So it's not done under Moses' eye.
You got to do it as Jeff Goldblum.
Here. So I have an idea.
Calf finds a way.
Gold finds a way.
Aaron is also very different in the Bible. I think he's a lot more on board with Moses' mission from the get-go.
Well, he's actually Moses' mouthpiece for most of it, because there's a whole thing where Moses tells God, like, I'm really inarticulate. I can't talk to Pharaoh. So everything that happens, Aaron's actually the one speaking to everyone.
Oh, this is the opposite then. This is the exact opposite.
I think that's another good choice.
This Moses is smooth as hell, which I love.
Yeah. I think it's a good adaptive choice, but it is a change.
I think the whole wisecracking protagonist thing is something that a lot of these do. I feel like it's something that I'm annoyed by in certain cases, but in most of these it works. Like, Jelana, you were talking about Sinbad. Like, I think that him being funny and sarcastic, like, his personality is really what sells it. I think that's what helps with Moses too. Like, he's very charming without being annoying. You know, like, you can see why people follow him.
Yeah, I think they balance it well. There's like little bits of humor with it, but he's not Deadpool.
Yeah, exactly. And he's humble too in a lot of ways. Like, he immediately takes responsibility with his father when Ramses get in trouble. And actually, that's one of my favorite scenes because I feel like the common thing to do is to have the dad clearly favor, like, the main character and have that spark a lot of, like, jealousy with the other sibling. And I think in this case, they make very clear that it, like, he states outright, like, no, Ramses has more responsibilities than you. I love both of you, but you're never going to have to carry the burden of ruling over Egypt like your brother is. So he has to watch himself more. And in a way, like, you can kind of understand where he's coming from, but in a way that's also a very damaging thing to put on somebody. you make clear that that you're going to be treating them differently, very open and outright.
That scene just made me realize that, well, it's very deliberate. His father is matching up to the statue in the background. But when it happens with Ramses later, and he has his statue of himself be bigger than his father, but he's still smaller than his father. His father's statue.
I know the shot
I didn't
you're
pick
talking
up
about.
on that. It's him and then the statue of his father and the bigger statue of him, but he's still living in the shadow of his father. That's crazy.
Yeah.
This movie rips. I didn't even see. That's such a good call out. Because I know the shot you're talking about, and I wasn't thinking of that symbolism. And I
didn't realize
it
until just now, till Angel brought up that scene. In your notes, Angel, you mentioned Moses killing somebody, I think. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I don't remember that, but again, I feel like
that is there. And
Evan,
like
that is something, that's there. Okay, yeah.
That's in the Bible.
I just happen to
that
not remember
happen.
that part. Like, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't remember that part necessarily. I think in my head, I'm just like, well, then wouldn't God have been mad? But I guess that's
Ramesses said that never happened, so what are you talking about?
a good point.
Never
He did
happened.
say it never happened. He actually said it never happened twice. He made a whole speech about it.
Just on that note, though, I think they do that well because I think the way it's presented in the Bible, it is a similar situation where Moses is trying to like help one of the Hebrews and he accidentally kills one of the Egyptian slavers in the process. But I think it's a smart choice to present it in light of the revelation of his birth. But there's really no biblical basis for it. I think it's a smart choice. Like, that's a really good way to adapt it.
Also, I never thought of how funny it was that Ramesses makes him the prince architect after they just destroyed like the city.
That is pretty funny. It's all nepotism, I feel like.
There's so much nepotism.
I don't think that he has an architecture degree.
No,
I don't think that he went to college, but I could be wrong.
He can't even architect his own shirt, so,
That's true. Well, none of them can.
They're not wearing
men in
shirts.
this wear shirts. Nobody wears shirts. Except Jethro. He's got that cool robe.
Yeah, well, Moses wears a shirt after. Ramses is full Zack Snyder the whole time.
Yeah. I also love Jethro's intro where he comes in and he just hugs him like a bear. It's so cool.
He's so wholesome.
He really is. And he doesn't get a lot of screen time if you think about it. He's really just got like a couple of scenes. He's got Through Heaven's Eyes, he's got that one scene, but he makes such an impression. And it's really great. Honestly, same with Zipporah too. Like, she doesn't get a lot of screen time either. Like, at least not a lot of focus. Like, a lot of the stuff she is kind of in the background, but the scenes that they put her in, she is making a huge impression.
That kind of gets into my topic a bit. If we're done,
we can move on.
Artistic license.
Yeah, no, we can jump into it. Like I said, I think ours are kind of blending together too.
Yeah, and you've touched on a lot of what I was going to, so I'll skip over a lot of it. My topic was characterizing biblical figures. All the stuff you were saying about the Moses and Ramses relationship, I think is also really smart. It really sells this movie. I love that there is so much attention given to characters, because I feel like that's always what's lacking in biblical stories, is you have all of these characters, but because it's written as history, like, I don't think it's a fault on any of the authors or anything, but we never get much of a personality from any of them. And I love that there's some time spent on that and giving him a history and focusing on how painful it is for him to turn against his family and like learn these things about him. And also how empowered he feels, and like Through Heaven's Eyes is partly such a great song because you feel how he is like rebuilding himself. Like, I think it makes sense. It's a very natural way to interpret that part of his journey. But I love that they really do give you emotional access to him, because I find that that's really hard to do with a lot of biblical figures, and that's maybe the best thing that a story like this can do, is take these stories that are told in a much more dry and like objective way and give them more emotional weight. I really like how they balance making the Pharaoh a like strong father figure to Moses and Ramses, but also unequivocally the villain. When he's comforting Moses and like being a father to him, like, I really like those scenes. and it feels like a very lived-in dynamic. Angel, you were talking about it before. You really feel the care he has for his sons, but it also doesn't diminish his role as a villain. Like the fact that he is the one enslaving all of these people, and especially like the last line that he has is just being incredibly dismissive.
Oh yeah, if anything, it highlights it.
I also found it interesting, and of course it makes sense just because of like how the story goes. But when Moses finds out that he's a Hebrew, the Pharaoh is perfectly ready to still accept him as his son. And, of course he is, because it's not a revelation to him. It's only a revelation to Moses. But there's still like a care there. And I feel like that just makes him feel more lived in, but it also doesn't diminish his role as the villain and oppressor.
It makes the parents feel more three-dimensional.
It really does. And his mom has basically the same line. You called it out earlier. When the gods send you a blessing, you don't ask why it was sent. Just forget. I don't remember the rest of her lines in that song, but she just tells him, like, yep, you know this now. That wasn't even a song.
She was just telling him that.
Mm-hmm. I think it might be both.
She was just spitting bars.
I really like that choice, and I think it carries through to Ramses. He just has one line, I won't be the weak link, which is calling back to what his father says in a really early scene. And because we have all that set up, it establishes a very clear character-based motivation for him to not let the Hebrews go. That's really good characterization. And it all feels very natural. It's not messing with the source material, but it is all made up, this version of the story. And it all feels so seamless. I also just want to call out that, like, and we talked about it with the hero's journey stuff, but Moses has such a great archetypal character construction, like, just at his core, based on, like, his position in this world. Like, born to the oppressed, raised by the oppressor, flees his home, and then returns to free the oppressed. Like, how many characters have imitated parts of that construction?
Mine is doing it right now in my new series, yeah.
And I think there's a dozen examples you can think of. I mean, this episode will come out after it, but we already recorded it. I don't mean to throw more shade at Man of Steel, but this is how you show
do.
us...
Yes, you do. You mean it.
I do mean it. I shouldn't have acted like I didn't. Throwing more shade at Man of Steel. This is how you show us a character struggling between two sides of his identity. Like, those scenes when he leaves Ramses, both times it really emphasizes the pain that he feels, both when he flees to the desert the first time, and then after the plague with the firstborn, when they're saying goodbye to each other. Like, we take a beat with Moses just, like, in pain after he's walked away from Ramses. That's the kind of thing that I feel like this sort of adaptation is perfect for. You don't get a moment like that in most biblical stories where it might say, like, Moses was greatly troubled, but it's, it's a translation, and
even that feels a little far, because I feel like a lot of the time they think that's letting the wires show, and it's not. Like, it adds realism and character to it. I feel like a lot of the time, like, with particular figures, they try to make them very, like, righteous and almost perfect, and I think what works so well here is that, like, they allow every one of these characters to have a flaw, to have, like, a big flaw, but also a lot of little flaws. Like, you can see it in Moses' character, like, the way his mother looks at him disappointed when he humiliates Zipporah in front of everybody, and how he wasn't thinking about the consequences until that moment. They allow all the characters to have that. And, like, Ramses, I think Ramses' major flaw is honestly just, like, his narrow focus. It makes him feel very, I guess, I don't want to say childlike in a lot of ways, but he is in a lot of ways, like, he's very stunted emotionally, in that, as soon as Moses shows up, he's very focused on Moses. One line that I really like is he's got Moses, like, what do you see? And he's like, a greater Egypt than my father. Like, that's been his sole goal his entire life, is to surpass his father just to make his father proud, which in a weird way is, like, kind of contradictory too. So they give all these characters these moments of, like, something flawed and about them that, like, makes it clear, like, none of these people are perfect, and none of what they're doing is definitively the right or the wrong thing the way that they're doing it. It's more like Moses' mission is right, but he still has to go against his brother, and it's hard for him. So I like that.
I like that he doesn't become a blank slate once he finds his purpose. They could have easily just made him perfect, like you said. I don't think I realized how much it pained him when I was a kid, like coming back and knowing what he was there to do, and that things couldn't be the way they were because he found his purpose in freeing the slaves. So yeah, I like that he keeps his emotions. It's not a scene I ever paid attention to because it was just a quiet moment, and I'm a kid who's bouncing off the walls, but him crying over what he had to do after having Ramesses' son smited. Like, I didn't realize, I would never paid attention to that moment. Like, he's in pain for that. Also, I like that God is voiced by Val Kilmer.
I didn't know that until this time.
With Val Kilmer voicing both Moses and God, some people believe that God is within, not an outside source. So it's like a reflection of you. So I think that casting that is kind of poetic in a sense.
I like that reading. I hadn't thought of that. I was just surprised that they were both Val Kilmer, but I like that reading. You guys kind of pointed to it earlier, but I just like watching this as a kid, I feel like I still got the place that Moses and Ramses are coming from with like the pressure from their dad. You guys are the oldest. I was the younger brother, and at the time I was watching this mostly, we only had one younger sister at the time, and she was like brand new. So like I think I still kind of got the dynamic that was at play there. And I think that's probably true of like most kids watching this. Like, you make this new angle to approach the character from that's not based in scripture, but it's something that anyone can really like attach themselves to, even like from the really young to the fully grown. And I also want to echo something you said, I think towards the beginning, Jelani. Like, I like that this story still hits as an adult. I mean, that's true of any like animated movie that like ages well, but I don't think it's surprising that this almost hits better as an adult, because especially like the Through Heaven's Eyes scene that we keep going back to, that kind of experience of like being pushed out of a community, or like having to forgive yourself and get back on your feet,
Questioning your self-worth.
yeah, like that kind of stuff doesn't really start happening for you until you're like at least a teenager, I feel like. So it's not like, I think you can still enjoy that part as a kid, but it's not really an experience that most kids have had to go through yet. It's more of an adult experience. I think it ages well, and like Angel said, I think I'm gonna rewatch this probably again. I think it probably has more to offer and is a really good adaptation of this story.
I don't want to cry again, man. I might have to give this a break.
I agree. I just watched it twice. I don't know that I can do it. I literally watched it before we got on here, and I'm like, this is very emotional.
It might hit for me differently someday. It's not one of my cry animation movie is Inside Out and Soul.
That's fair.
That
Soul
also
is fair.
like
I never
hits for
saw
me a
Inside
bit
Out,
more
still.
personally. You really
You
need
haven't seen
to.
Inside Out?
We got to talk
I
about
haven't seen
Soul
Soul
someday
yet.
too.
Like, one thing I like is that, like, they add conflict by changing Aaron a little bit. It's good that they have somebody that's skeptical, and I like that they're able to use him to point out that, like, Moses didn't really care until he discovered his, like, who he really was. Like, he didn't care about the slaves before then, and even Moses is like, yeah, you're right, but then he pushes through anyway. And Miriam, like, has a strong moment too where she, like, acknowledges that with him and says, but we can forgive you anyway. Now we're free. Let's go be free. And I think that's really great. There's little moments like that.
I think it's also a smarter choice than having like a whole crowd of nameless characters fill that role, because you could have easily had it be, I think that might even be how it goes in the Bible, where like a whole bunch of the Hebrews are like upset at Moses because they recognize him as like somebody who used to oppress them. I think it's a lot cleaner to just have it be the two characters.
It made the moment where Aaron's the first to step into the Red Sea that much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm walking through.
I think it's a smart choice, especially because like they don't have a lot to do. Moses and Ramses are really the only two characters in the story that like really have agency and make any changes. So it's nice that they were able
do all
to
the heavy
sprinkle
lifting.
Yeah, it's nice they were able to sprinkle in stuff for these other characters that make them feel lived in, but they don't override. I think it's very wisely done.
Yeah, it's about making the most of like the small moments that they do
Mhm.
have, and making it clear that like they have had lives before Moses came along. Like you can even see that in something as simple as like Aaron and Miriam's dynamic. They have a very specific sibling dynamic that I think feels very familiar.
Yeah, just putting them in conflict in basically like the 3 scenes that they're in just like makes them more fleshed out. They just have different perspectives that tells us something about them. Are we ready to close out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
All right, cool.
good movie.
Very good movie. I'm glad I revisited it.
What's the rating?
4 out of 5.
Out of 10, Evan.
8 out of 10.
Okay.
Sorry, I
I go
default to
9.
Letterboxd.
I'd probably put this at a 9.
Not fighting you guys on that at all.
Yeah, it's good, really good from you. Coming from you.
I have nothing bad to say about it. A 9 is a harder threshold for me to pass. Going to the boilerplate. Exciting announcement. We have a new patron. I told these guys before, but shout out to our new patron, January Johns. We are going to be doing a patron exclusive episode on miscongeniality at his request. And that is something that's available to any of you who want to become a patron. If you sign up, you can...
You got $1.
Yeah, just $1 a month.
Give us money, please.
And you can choose an episode that you want us to do. Maybe for the main channel, we decided miscongeniality is probably better for Patreon, even though I haven't seen it yet, but it just kind of seems that way. But yeah, let us know. Our upcoming episodes are going to be Man of Steel, and then immediately after that will be the new Superman movie, once that comes out. I already mentioned... Yeah.
I'm about to hop off the internet, bro, because they keep showing new still from Superman. It's like, bro, y'all gonna release every frame of the movie at this
Stop
point.
showing
Like,
me
please.
things, please. Just let me watch the movie.
Yeah, I had to do that with Mission Impossible in like the week leading up to it. I was like, I gotta just be off everything. But we'll be doing that. I already mentioned we have our Patreon, we have our YouTube channel. I should be getting a Mission Impossible ranking video up soon. We are on Blue Sky and Instagram at INT Analysis Pod. I am on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd at ev_Wes. And where are you guys at?
I'm on Instagram at Jelani T. Kelly, YouTube, Jelani T. Kelly. I need to do this more often. Amazon, Jelani T. Kelly, or just Jelani Kelly. You can look. I have 5 books on Amazon with a new series coming too. I'm gonna get a literary agent for that one. Look out for that. I'm sure I'll announce it on here when that's done. Probably before end of summer. All 20 chapters are done. I still gotta write the epilogue, but that's close to being finished. Actors Access at Casting Networks. I'm at 49 auditions in 5.5 weeks, or 40 days as of today.
Nice.
So I'm a pretty big deal. And during this, I haven't cut it, but I might have had another booking just during this episode, guys. So like, yeah,
Things are popping off.
yeah, I'm going crazy. So pay me while you can.
The chin grab at the end. All right, Angel, where are you?
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram at AngelsArc15, and I'm on Letterboxd at Serenity Cinema. Follow me too. I post a lot on Letterboxd, or I'm trying to. So I'm hoping to post more reviews and stuff soon. I want to post a review of this once I think about words to say.
Well, you put a lot of them in this episode, so maybe find the best ones.
I did, but I need to organize them into something that makes sense.
All right, we will see you next time then. Thanks for watching.
Bye.